Hey guys, welcome back to the Resilient Show. I am not in the normal studio. I'm here in San Diego, California at Victory MMA, and I'm in actually my friend Jocko's studio. And I just got done recording a podcast with Jocko. If you haven't heard my previous episode with Jocko, you can go back and listen to it. Episode 375. Today we recorded episode 467. So it should already be out by the time this posts. And they're talking a lot about my book, Mission Without Borders. But today I'm super excited. It's as we head into New Year's. I can't think of a better person to talk about your New Year's resolution, moving forward in 2025 with a disciplined life than Jocko. So without further ado, we have Jocko here on the show. And you're in for a treat to hear about Jocko's kind of perspectives in life of discipline and taking battlefield perspectives and helping apply to your everyday living. So Jocko, awesome to be here. Thanks for hosting us in your studio.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to read your bio. I think everybody here knows you, but I'm going to get into it. Jocko Willink is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL officer. You started enlisted. You did 20 years as both enlisted and a SEAL officer. You co-authored the #1 New York Times bestselling book, Extreme Ownership. Also authored Dichotomy of Leadership, a number of other books. You have some children's books that are absolutely amazing, and I recommend any parent to have their kids read some of these children's books, which is also being made into a movie. You host the top-rated podcast, the Jocko Podcast, co-founder of Echelon Front, where you serve as a chief executive officer, leadership instructor, speaker, and strategic advisor. You're known for your time in the SEAL teams as the commander of SEAL Team 3, Task Unit Bruiser, during the Battle of Ramadi, and I definitely want to talk about that today. But as we kick off in the New Year's, I want to start off with just asking about the topic of resiliency and how people living resilient lives can move into 2025. What's your outlook on 2025 with all the changes that we're seeing in our country right now on people just moving forward with resilient lives and making these New Year's commitments?
Yeah, I think that seems like the country's moving in a pretty good direction right now. I guess we'll be finding out how well it actually goes. There's always a lot more resistance in such a giant bureaucracy, the U.S. government. So it never changes as quickly as you want it to. But yeah. I think it'll continue to move, and I think it's moving at least in a positive direction at this time. And then from an individual level, we're always trying to get stronger, smarter, faster, better, and help other people do the same. So that's what's happening in my world.
You're having a lot of changes in Victory MMA's changing a new facility, and what's the kind of latest at Victory?
Yeah, so we had a fire in Victory, and it didn't look too bad on the news. It looked like a pretty small little fire, but fires are really bad, and it really did a lot of damage. We opened another location. It's about 15 minutes from the original Victory. And so we've been training there, but hopefully by the time this podcast come out in the new year, we'll be back to our original location. But it's just a lot of work to be done, a lot of construction work to do. It's probably about a $3 million job that we're working through right now.
I mean, the location's amazing, and you have over 2,000 students that train.
Just under 2,000 students at this location before the fire. So we'll be back.
Yeah. For those outside of the jiu-jitsu world, that's a lot of students. It's a big team.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's not just a jiu-jitsu gym. We have a gym, we have a CrossFit, we have boxing, Muay Thai, MMA, and jiu-jitsu. So it's a pretty all-encompassing gym. It's a little bit of a different model than, a lot of times when people think of jiu-jitsu, a normal jiu-jitsu academy, like where I started jiu-jitsu at, not where I started, but the first academy that I went to was more of a standard jiu-jitsu academy. They just teach jiu-jitsu. It's smaller, so you don't need a huge facility because there's, a few hundred students, and that's great. That's what most jiu-jitsu academies are like. And there's a reason for that, because it's nice. You get a small team that's all knows each other well. But our gym, Victory, we offer a lot of other aspects of training, not just jiu-jitsu. So people come in there for different reasons. There's people that train at Victory that don't train jiu-jitsu. Just like there's people that train at Victory that don't train boxing or Muay Thai or CrossFit or lift at the gym. But most people do two out of however many that is, 2 out of 5 or 2 out of 6. Most people do 2. They might lift there and do jiu-jitsu, or they do Muay Thai and they lift, or they do jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai. Most people do two, I would say.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about jiu-jitsu because it's something that you and I have in common. You know, we obviously both come from military special operations backgrounds, but I think you and I have a lot in common with jiu-jitsu because it's really foundationally important to both of us. And we've been doing it for a long time. I grew up doing traditional jiu-jitsu and judo and grappling arts. And in 1995, I started Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I'm thinking you probably around the same time frame, right?
Yeah, so I started jiu-jitsu in 1992.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm older. I think I'm 53.
Yeah, I'm 49. So
yeah.
But 92, that's the very beginning. So how'd you get introduced to it? Where and how?
Yeah, I was on my first deployment as a SEAL, and there was a master chief there, old master chief named Steve Bailey. And I always joke when I say he was old because he was probably like 40.
Yeah.
But, at the time I was 20 or 19 or 20. Actually, I guess I'd turned 21 by then. And he came to the platoon space. We got on deployment. He came to the platoon space and said, "Who here wants to learn how to fight?" And I raised my hand like, what's this old man going to teach me? Mm-hmm. And sure enough, he knew jiu-jitsu. None of us did. No one knew any jiu-jitsu. We didn't even understand. I mean, everybody today understands what the guard is, understands what the mount is, understands what the back is. Like everyone understands that because you get it from watching UFC. Even if you watch the highlights from UFC, you understand what's happening. We didn't know any of that. It wasn't even a thing. It was this completely foreign, alien thing. And so he lined up myself, and there was probably about 4 other new guys. And he just lined us up and just tapped us out. And by the way, he was like a mid-level white belt. It wasn't like he was some extremely great.
He just had introduction level to jiu-jitsu, but it's enough.
He was one of the guys that trained. You've heard of the Gracie Garage up in Torrance. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So he was one of the guys that trained up at the Gracie Garage in Torrance back in the 80s, in the late 80s. But he knew enough, and when you literally know nothing, like he could just do whatever he wanted to us. So that was my introduction to jiu-jitsu, and I trained with him for a while on that deployment. And then when I got home, I eventually went to a place called Fabio Santos. Mm-hmm. Fabio Santos Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he was
that's Tino Martinez.
Yes, that's where Tino's from, and a bunch of guys originated there. Tino's one of them, but obviously Dean Lister, he was from there, and then we have a whole series of black belts that all started there from back in the day. So very cool.
Everybody, I've never met Fabio, but everybody that's come out of there has been tough, like successful competitors.
Yeah. Fabio was like classic old school Brazilian. Like it was good training. He was a great foundation for sure.
That's really cool. I love hearing those stories about how jiu-jitsu started because I always say when someone first gets an introduction to jiu-jitsu and they get steamrolled by something they didn't even know existed, they have one or two reactions. One is that I never want anything to do with that again, or I have to learn that. Yeah. And I remember when I was in 29 Palms, California in 95 and I had seen a sign for jiu-jitsu, but I grew up in traditional jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, it was spelled different, but I went to the base gym, and I tried it, and it was 2 guys out of Torrance, and they were blue belts, and I got my butt just smashed, and I'm like, I have to learn this, and I've been obsessed ever since, and even now 45 years of my life has been on the mats. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since 95, and I still, every time I drive to Jiu-Jitsu, I get excited. And I'm like, man, if I have like a hobby that I could be doing that long and I still get excited every time I'm going there, it's probably the right one for me.
Yeah, Jiu-Jitsu's outstanding. I can't say enough good things about it.
Well, those looking for a New Year's kind of resolution, what do you say about those giving Jiu-Jitsu a try?
Oh, that's a great thing to try for New Year's. You should try it 100%.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter. One of the things that people say is, do I need to get in shape before I start jiu-jitsu? You don't.
You won't.
Jiu-jitsu will get you into shape. So
you won't be able to anyway, right?
Yeah. Just go start training.
Yeah.
Start today.
Yeah. I see so many people that are even tough guys, like kind of strong athletic guys that are intimidated. They're kind of intimidated to try because they're worried about like their ego or losing or whatnot.
Well, if you're worried about losing, you're going to get beat by a 135-pound, 17-year-old kid who's going to just tap you out over and over again. And you're going to be wondering what's happening with your life.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I'm an advocate for that. Some New Year's resolutions, find the jiu-jitsu. I want to talk about your time in Iraq. Task Unit Bruiser was something all of us in the military like heard about the stories, and your reputation. A lot of your reputation comes from being the commander of that unit. It's one of the most decorated combat units in special operations. And during the Battle of Ramadi, I believe from everything I've read, your leadership of that command changed the SOPs of naval special warfare and how they kinetic combat moving forward. And
that's probably a little bit of an exaggeration. I wouldn't go that far, but it was certainly, we took an approach that I think guys started to embrace after that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Well, I just heard so many people say that, and and pointing credit to your leadership for that. But as the commander of Task Unit Bruiser, what was your experience before that in combat? Had you had any? Was this were you going into Ramadi as a brand new combat leader, or did you have combat experience prior to that?
I was very lucky and very fortunate through my whole career. I was probably I'm a very lucky person, and I had come up through the ranks. So I started off as an enlisted guy. So, that meant I did multiple deployments as an enlisted guy, and then I went into the training cell. This is back when the SEAL team had its own training department inside of the SEAL team.
Right.
And I was inside the training department at the SEAL team for a few years while I was trying to while I was applying for an officer program. And so I was teaching. I taught everything else single too. So it was like every land warfare, CQC, diving, I would teach and go on every trip that I could possibly go on. And so, we just had a great time. And then I got picked up for something called the Seaman Admiral program, which was, again, I was very lucky to get picked up for that. They only took 50 people out of the whole Navy, not just the SEAL teams, but the whole Navy. So, luckily I had a good experience as a enlisted SEAL and, been recognized for doing a good job. And so then I got picked up for that program. When I got picked up for that program, I went out to the East Coast. I did a couple deployments out on the East Coast. And there was, again, I was always very lucky in my career because I was, at the time, this was around the millennium, and there wasn't much going on in the world. Well, one of the things that was going on was shipboarding, was VBSS shipboarding over in the Persian Gulf. There was smugglers smuggling stuff out of Iraq. There were sanctions against Iraq at the time. And so my platoon, which was over there, was a strike platoon, which meant we went off of a carrier. And so we had the opportunity to do a bunch of shipboarding over there. And again, that was the only real missions.
Yeah.
Some of the very few real missions that were going on in the late 90s and early 2000s. So I was lucky enough to be, an assistant platoon commander and do a bunch of shipboardings during that time. And again, it was like, we look back now, it's like kind of a joke.
Yeah.
But at the time, we were lock and loading our weapons and we were going on taking down ships and
real world missions.
Yeah.
VBSS, for those of vessel-borne search and seizure.
Visit board search and seizure. It's taking down ships and getting control of them and then turning them over to the authorities once you got them cleared. So I was lucky enough to be able to do that. And then so I finished that deployment in 2000. And then I actually had to go to college because I hadn't been to college. And the Navy made me go to college because I literally said, I'll go to college when I'm 40 years old. I shouldn't go right now. And they said, no, you actually have to go now. So I went to college. And when I was in college, that's when September 11th happened. And as soon as I graduated, went back to a SEAL team and I went to SEAL Team 7. And as soon as I got back there, my executive officer at SEAL Team 2 was now the commanding officer of SEAL Team 7. So I knew him and, I had worked for him and had a great relationship with him. And so he brought me to SEAL Team 7, and then the team was probably 4 months from going on deployment. And unfortunately for one of the platoon commanders, he was subpar. And so the commanding officer fired him and put me in charge of the platoon and then sent me to Iraq. I mean, it was like just awesome.
Yeah.
And so when I got to Iraq, we were the only platoon in Iraq, the only SEAL platoon in Iraq. So,
oh, wow. I did not realize that. Yeah.
And so there was a time period where we were the only SEAL platoon in Iraq. It wasn't for very long, but for a little while we were the only SEAL platoon in Iraq. And so we were doing a lot of direct action missions. Well, in fact, that's what we were doing. We were doing direct action. We did some other like little things, but our focus was just DAs. And so we'd get intel from wherever and then we'd go and hit targets. And
Platoon size elements or?
yeah, so we had like a platoon a little bit more. We got plussed up with some guys from some other platoons, and we also worked with the Polish Grom. I actually lived and worked with the Polish Grom.
For those listening who don't know who.
The Grom is like the special operations for Poland, and they're just awesome guys. And we had a great relationship with them. One of my good friends is a American SEAL, but he had grown up in Poland, and so he spoke Polish, and his name is Drago. And Drago was the liaison between the Grom and the Americans. And so here it was, I had like a really good friend of mine was the liaison. And so, yeah, it was great. We lived there. We lived right there in Baghdad, right by Baghdad International Airport. And so we did missions all the time. And so I got a lot of experience in that. We didn't get in, at the time, the enemy wasn't very organized. So there was IEDs happening, but they weren't like what they escalated to. We got ambushed a few times. I had one guy get wounded, but it wasn't really bad. And we did just a lot of missions. I mean, I got a lot of experience doing missions. And so when I got done with that deployment, matter of fact, it wasn't even when I got done. We were finishing that deployment. And my commanding officer, again, this guy is like, I had a great relationship with this guy. I worked for him at SEAL Team 2. I would now work for him at SEAL Team 7. He put me in great positions. And when we were wrapping up that deployment, he's like, you know what, my last thing that I'm going to do as the commanding officer of SEAL Team 7? I was like, no, sir, what? And he said, I'm going to make sure that you're the aide, the admiral's aide. So there's one admiral that's in charge of all the SEALs, and he gets an aide de camp. I didn't really recognize it at the time, but there was a bunch of reasons why that happened. One of the reasons why they like to have a guy go to be with the admiral, especially at this time, that like is fresh off the battlefield, and I was as fresh as they got. And luckily I'd had a really good deployment and conducted a bunch of operations. And that is really nice for the admiral who
disconnected.
Who's somewhat disconnected, to be able to say, oh, now I've got this guy that literally just got off the battlefield 2 weeks ago, and he can tell, he can explain to me what's going on if there's something I don't understand. He can give granularity on subjects that I might not be 100% granular on because, he's the admiral. The admiral is not out kicking indoors.
Right.
And so I ended up going, and it's also, it ended up being awesome because now I'm the admiral's aide and I get to see and understand things that I never would have seen or understood.
From a strategic level.
Yeah.
Organization level.
Yeah. We were flying to the Pentagon all the time. I'm sitting in meetings, literally in meetings with the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld.
You're
sitting in the back
25
room.
Years old?
No, because I was a prior enlisted guy, so I was older. I was 33.
Okay.
But, I'm literally sitting in a room with Donald Rumsfeld. I'm literally sitting in the room with the commander of SOCOM and hearing conversations, private conversations, and getting to understand how decisions are getting made. And not to mention, I was getting to know, I was meeting all the leadership in NSW and understanding, beyond the combat stuff, manning, finance. Like, you don't understand where this money's coming from. You don't even understand that there is money. When you're at a SEAL team, you're just shooting your weapon. So starting to understand the manning and how the personnel worked, that was great. And then understanding, and I also got to see from a strategic perspective what's going on with the war, because I'd be sitting in with the SOCOM commander, and again, I'm nobody. I'm literally nobody. I'm not even at the table, but you are sitting in the, at the edge of the room or at the back of the room, and you get to hear all the briefs from all the different special operations unit, what they're doing. And then going to the conventional side and sitting in rooms and hearing the Army or the Marine Corps brief, what's happening. So I got a pretty good strategic understanding of what was happening in the war. And it was really good. I also got to see, we had things happen in NSW. Somebody uploaded pictures of their deployment in Iraq. So when I was at SEAL Team 7, I relieved SEAL Team 5. Well, SEAL Team 5, somebody had uploaded pictures to some, ancient image storage website, and they got leaked out. And so now I got to see how that impacts NSW, what it's like when the Secretary of the Navy is calling the Admiral and saying, hey, what is going on with these pictures? Why is this happening? And that was everything from like someone gets a DUI, someone gets into a fight. I got to realize and recognize how much visibility and how negative it was when something negative happened in our community, how bad it was for the community, and how the admiral and the commodores had to answer to this stuff all the time. And so it made me a lot more aware of the requirement for a high level of professionalism inside the community. Now, quite frankly, I was kind of raised that way because I started my career at SEAL Team 1, and SEAL Team 1, they used to call it Stalag Team 1 because it was the strictest on the West Coast. On the East Coast, it was SEAL Team 2, and I went to SEAL Team 2. SEAL Team 2 was strict. SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 2 were sort of they were the original two SEAL teams, but they were known for like uniform inspections, haircuts. Like that's how I was raised. So I already had some of that level of professionalism that was indoctrinated and inculcated into my brain as a young SEAL, but now I got to see why it was important. So that was very helpful. And so I got done. It was a 13-month hitch, being the Admiral's aide. And when I got done with that, that's when I got to SEAL Team 3, and that's when I took over as a task unit commander. So by the time I got to Ramadi, I had actually a lot of experience for a SEAL at the time.
Super diverse, like amount of experience to bring to the table.
Yeah, it was definitely, I was in a good spot. I was very, very lucky in my career for sure.
So what was Task Unit Bruiser's mission in Ramadi?
Yeah, so I think that's where when you mentioned the little bit of a paradigm shift. First of all, my first deployment, like I mentioned, we were doing direct action, and direct action is a great mission. We're well trained for them, but as I looked at what was happening, so there was about a 2.5 year time had elapsed since I left Baghdad, and now I'm back in Ramadi. And what I noticed was we had been doing these direct action missions, and so had everybody else.
Right.
Everybody, the Marine Corps was doing them, the Army was doing them. I'm not talking about Marine Corps Special Operations. I'm not talking about Marine Corps Special Forces or Rangers. I'm talking about everybody.
Yeah,
every infantry unit was out there doing direct action missions. And what I noticed when I got to Ramadi was we were losing the war. And these direct action missions that we were all doing, we go out, grab a bad guy, there was another bad guy to take his place. And so I was very concerned about that. And I actually went back to one of my friends was over at the JSOC unit. I went and talked to him, and he had me talk to his intel officer. His intel officer was actually a female that was my intel officer on my first deployment to Iraq. And so I had a good relationship with her, and she was kind of telling me what's going on. That's what really made me realize this issue, right? Was when I saw that we kept doing these direct action missions, but
the battlefield was evolving and
we weren't making noticeable progress. And now this is 2006. So popular opinion was against the war. The politicians were against the war. The news was against the war. This is when Colonel Devlin from the Marine Corps, that report had been written about Al-Anbar province and Ramadi being lost. Like, it was a really bad situation. But I knew that we'd been doing the same type of operations for all these years, and it wasn't really moving the needle the way it needed to, or at least other lines of operations had to be opened up. And I went back, and there was a new version of the Counterinsurgency manual that had just been published. And in fact, it wasn't even published yet. There was a draft of it on the internet, and it was written by General Petraeus and some of his mafia colonels, guys like H.R. McMaster, guys that were really steeped in the understanding of counterinsurgency, and they'd written this manual. And so I literally went back, downloaded this manual, and read it. And I said, we've got to do something different. We've got to help with this counterinsurgency effort. And then, again, through luck, the brigade that we were there with in Ramadi when we showed up was called the 228. They were a National Guard unit out of Pennsylvania, just outstanding soldiers. And it was their time to go home, and another group came in to take their place. It was the 11 AD, the Ready First Brigade, and the Ready First Brigade was commanded by a guy named Colonel Sean McFarland, who eventually became a general. But he came in with a strategy of counterinsurgency, which was to go into these enemy-controlled territories, set up what we called combat outposts, which was basically take 3, 4, 5 buildings, reinforce those buildings, and live in the neighborhood with the local populace. Because as bad as Ramadi was, there was a bunch of local civilians that lived there. and they didn't want the insurgents to be there.
Right.
And so that's what we ended up doing.
When you say insurgents, are you talking like Iranians? When you say insurgents,
it was a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So, and actually Ramadi had been a former Iraqi army base in the Saddam years. And so there's a lot of former military people there, but there was foreign fighters that were coming in that were running operations, that were kind of overseeing operations. There was some insurgents that were Iraqi insurgents. There was foreign fighters. There was also just like, hey, I'm a 22-year-old kid. I don't have any money. I want money. You'll give me money to go shoot an RPG at the American forces. I'll do that. So when we talk about insurgents, generally the term that we use now that I think about it was anti-Iraqi forces, AIF.
Okay.
Anti-Iraqi forces or anti-coalition forces, but we called them anti-Iraqi forces probably for, psychological reasons that these people, that the insurgents weren't just against the coalition. They were actually against the Iraqi people, which they were. And
Right.
They were murdering the civilians there and torturing them and doing other horrible things to the local populace. So when I showed up there, I had a pretty good feel for what was happening. I had a lot of understanding kind of across the board.
And you said there was a paradigm shift, like you shifted from the original mission to doing those kind of counterinsurgency operations. What did that look like? I mean, what type of I know from what I understand, you guys embedded a lot with the Army infantry guys.
That's really the key component. I think that was a bit different. And I recently had Colonel Sean McFarland on General Sean McFarland on my podcast. But I went to them and I had said the same thing to Colonel Gronsky, who was the brigade commander of the 228. Both these guys, my attitude was, how can we help you? What do you need from us? We're here to support, which is definitely not normal for special operations. Most of the time, special operations, we kind of work in our own envelope, on our own mission set. And here I was coming in saying, hey, listen, we will help you. And thankfully, I had a great relationship with my commanding officer at SEAL Team 3, and he was open to, us being able to help out and us trying to make things happen. And, of course, he has to approve every mission, there's very few missions that we could run without approval. And actually, within a very short period of time, we basically had to run everything through them because we were going out a lot and we were killing a lot of enemy fighters. And so when those reports were going up the chain of command up to the Siege of Sodif, we're like, hey, what's going on? What's happening here? We want to know what's happening. And sure enough, I got visits from everybody. The Siege of Sodif commander, who was great, my commanding officer, the Commodore, the Admiral, we had General Brown, who was the 4-star Admiral in charge of SOCOM. I had everybody come through and visit Task Unit Bruiser. We were a very nice vacation spot for them, but we were well supported by the chain of command. A lot of oversight from the chain of command, which is fine.
Sure.
So what we did was, how can we support the Army and the Marine Corps? We had 3A Marines were there, and then it was a bunch of Army battalions, first the 506, 137, 135, just a whole array of combat power on that battlefield. And our attitude was, how can we help you? One of the ways that we realized we could help them a lot was through sniper operations. And so as these combat outposts were being put in throughout Ramadi, as they were being built, the enemy would attack. And so when the enemy would attack, we would set up sniper overwatch positions that were like 300, 400, 500 meters away from the combat outpost that was being built. And as the enemy would maneuver in to attack, we would be in a position to interdict and eliminate them. And that's what we did. That's part of what we did. We also did a ton of direct action missions. We also did an incredible amount of civil affairs operations. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars doing civil affairs projects inside the city and on the outskirts of the city. But certainly when you say, oh, you heard about the missions that Task Unit Bruiser executed, probably what you heard the most about was our sniper overwatch missions.
Yeah. In those kind of environments, especially in the urban environments like that, having sniper overwatch positions is so crucial. I was shocked. I don't know if you heard this, but I was shocked to learn that General Berger, previous combat out of the Marine Corps, removed the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School. Have you heard this?
I had heard that.
Yeah. And they kept MARSOC still has a sniper school. There's still a Marine Recon Sniper School, but the historical Marine Corps Scout Sniper School is currently not in operation. I hope that changes because more than a special operations or as much as the special operations communities need snipers, man, those just conventional infantry units and at the battalion level need battalion level scout snipers.
The sniper is, and this is again, I was a real student of a guy named Colonel David Hackworth, who was a Army officer in Korea and Vietnam, and he wrote in his books about the use of snipers and how effective they were out on the battlefield. And that's definitely the original seed in my mind was from reading his books. But I mean, you've been, when you were on my podcast last, you talked about in your book the fact that there was rumors that the Russians were targeting American humanitarian workers. And even that right there, the fact that you put it in the book was enough to tell you that at some level, psychologically, it entered your brain. Now just imagine if humanitarian workers actually started getting killed by snipers.
Right.
Then what does it do? That's what it was like in Ramadi. Having the capability to kill the enemy with precision, with no collateral damage, very targeted, and very high numbers of enemy killed with that kind of precision was very effective.
Is there a mission or a series of missions that really stand out to you in your experience we all look back and we have these kind of highlight moments in combat. Is there anything that sticks out to you that you, from combat?
I mean, all those missions, we'd be putting in these combat outposts and, first of all, I didn't recognize this until I had General McFarland on my podcast. We did so much so fast. And this is, when I say we, again, I'm not talking about us SEALs. I'm talking about this entire brigade. These big giant combat outposts, which were giant missions. To give you some sense, the very first operation that we conducted putting in a combat outpost, we had like 50 armor pieces going in with SEALs in the lead, taking down the building or taking down what was going to become the combat outpost, setting up Overwatch. And then, I'm with the battalion that's moving in. Yeah. Like it's crazy how much was happening. And then, by the way, that was one side of Ramadi. We had the exact same thing going on the other side of Ramadi the same day with another SEAL element out there taking lead, taking down buildings that are going to be turned over. And we did this type of operation like every 3 to 4 days. It was a lot of operations, but there's so many things that you remember.
Sure.
A lot of the things that stick in my mind were things that things that I never expected to see.
Yeah.
Which was like being in an Overwatch position and watching as a column of tanks is driving down the street, protecting my SEALs who are returning from a combat operation with another tank behind them. And I'm like, this is like World War II. So there was a lot of times when I was doing stuff where it felt very much like World War II type activities were going on, main guns firing from tanks, and being out there for those massive operations was a real experience.
Hey guys, 10 years ago, I had found myself in a position to where investing in Mighty Oaks and all the different things I'm involved in, I had found myself not prepared for retirement. And I went to my friend Ryan Wheelis at Allied Wealth. He had been a longtime supporter of Mighty Oaks Foundation. From the beginning, he's one of our first donors to Mighty Oaks, has been a friend for a long time, and I really trusted him. And he has helped me build my retirement and invest in my future through his company, Allied Wealth. He's one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to wealth management, and has taken money that I had stuck away in 401ks that was not really producing and made it produce tenfold. And I'm so happy with the results for me that I asked him to partner with this show, and he is a partner of this show now. And we want to not only let you guys know about Allied Wealth, but we're going to be doing some special episodes on wealth management management with Ryan, helping co-host them. I say co-host. I'm going to be asking him questions and we're going to be providing you information on how to best manage your wealth. So if you're like me and you need someone to help you with your retirement, with your investments, with just your overall wealth management, go to alliedwealth.com and meet Ryan and his team to get you set up. In combat, you get these moments of chaos. The things you teach in the corporate world of being able to function in chaos, having that calm. A lot of the at least stories I relate to are these just chaotic moments in combat where you just felt this sense of calm, and then you relate that to the business world, right? And to be able to have that calm and steadiness. Is there moments like that you could relate to, what you do now, what you teach now, and can relate back to?
Yeah. So, a lot of this ties back to what I learned when I was a young SEAL. I wrote about this in a book I wrote called Leadership Strategy and Tactics, but we were doing GoPlats, which is gas oil platforms. Have you ever done GoPlats before? No. Okay. So GoPlats, it's a gas oil platform. It's this really complicated, crazy thing. To cut to the chase here, we were doing this and I was a new guy. I was the youngest guy. I was the youngest and most junior guy in my first 2 SEAL platoons. So I've been doing this stuff since I was a little kid, right? But I'm in my first platoon. I'm the youngest guy. I'm the most junior guy. And we get to this spot where the platoon is online on this big section of this gas oil platform and no one's making any calls. And I'm like a new guy. I'm looking down my weapon, scanning for targets. No one's making any calls, scanning for targets. No one's making any calls. And finally, I realize no one's going to make any calls. So I take like one step off the skirmish line and high port my weapon. I look around and I see that everyone else in the platoon is staring down their weapons, including my platoon chief, including my platoon commander, including my assistant platoon commander, including my LPO. So they can't see what's happening. And so I decided as a new guy, which is a new guy, you keep your mouth shut and you keep your ears open. You don't say anything, but no one's making a call. So after like 30 seconds or whatever it was, I made the call. I said, hold left, clear right. And the guys did what they were supposed to do. And when we got done clearing the gas oil platform, the platoon chief was like, hey, good job making that call. And I was kind of surprised. And as I thought about it, I was like, wait, why was I able to make the call and my platoon chief didn't, And good platoon chief, good platoon commander, like these are good guys. These are good guys. And I realized it was because I took a step back and I detached from the situation and I looked around. And so that became my mode of operating.
Yeah.
And then it really got drilled down when I was in training cell, 5 or 6 years later at SEAL Team 1. Because now I'm watching as a lane grader, I'm watching immediate action drills and I can see exactly what to do. And the reason I can see exactly what to do is because I'm not in it. And I realized that the place to be was not in it. The place to be was 6 inches out of it, 8 inches out of it, 2 feet out of it. Anytime you can step back and look around, you're going to be able to make a better call. And so that's what I did my whole career. And so that also includes detaching from your emotions, making sure you're not getting, excited or angry or anything like that. And so I would just be calm, look around, make a call. And that's the way I always operated. There was, when there was chaos going on, I would relax, look around, and make a call. That's what I did. And guys in my platoons did, the officers and the enlisted guys, like they were just squared away, calm, cool, and collected. And, I had one situation where we had one Iraqi had been wounded badly. He ended up dying. Another Iraqi was wounded and a big, massive gunfight going on. And the junior officer, that was the element leader, calls me on the radio and I'm like, whatever, probably a few 100 meters away. And he calls me up and I can hear massive gunfight going on. And I run to the rooftop of this building because I know he's going to be trying to call me. And when I get up there, he comes up on the radio and he's like, hey, Jocko, this is so-and-so. He's like, we got 2 wounded. I need immediate casualty evacuation and I need fire support. I was like, Roger. What building? He's like, building 38. I'm like, stand by, inbound. And like, just like that, the guy's dealing with, wounded and dying Iraqi soldiers in a massive gunfight. And he's talking to me like I'm talking to you right now. So the guys really stepped up and that's because we trained really, really hard. And I put everybody in super high pressure situations and taught them that if they got emotional, they were not going to be able to make good calls.
Yeah, that's such a important lesson in life. Like you see it in jiu-jitsu mats, right? And you see it in combat. Like you train hard, you train chaotic, then you're not surprised when you find yourself in those real life situations. And
Yep.
yeah, and you're able to be composed and calm and make wise or calculated decisions in those moments. Our military right now is, first of all, I'll say this before I even ask the question. The United States military is apolitical. It doesn't matter who the commander-in-chief is, but they got R or D behind their name. They're apolitical, and they're going to do what they raise their hand to do. Our military has been through a variety, bounced back and forth between a variety of leadership. They've been tug of war with the political different divides in our country. And for me, I want to see stability in our military so our men and women that raise their hand to serve have the best opportunity to be able to do what they committed themselves to do. And so in 2025, our military's come under new leadership. They have a new commander-in-chief. They're going to have a new secretary of defense, a new boss, and there's going to be a lot of changes in the military. What would you say for those who, morale, and I'll say this too, our biggest issue in our military, I believe right now is morale, recruiting, retention. And so there's been a lot of pressure on the military between all this political stuff. Moving forward in 2025, what would you say to those troops that have been just discouraged, frustrated with military service, and just lacking that motivation with a brand new beginning?
Yeah, I've always looked at it. I worked for a bunch of different presidents, just like you did. I worked for George H.W. Bush, and then I worked for Clinton, and then I worked for Bush, and then I worked for Obama. And so I worked for a lot of different presidents, and then more important, and this from being in the military, you're going to get a new commanding officer every 2 years. You're going to get a new platoon commander every 2 years. Your leadership is going to change. I never focused very much on my leadership and what their attitude was. I focused on what my attitude was and what my attitude was going to be with my guys. Mm-hmm. And so to me, regardless of what's going on in the world, what's going on politically, we're going to have an awesome time. We're going to train really hard. We're going to be totally prepared, and we're going to be ready to rock and roll when the call comes. I found myself able to distinguish or discriminate between things that were happening up the chain of command in the political world and what my platoon, my squad, my task unit, my training detachment, what we were doing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good to be that buffer for your troops, because you know what you need to do. You know what you need to do to get ready. And I'll tell you what, do you need money to train? Sure, you need some. I can promise you, if you come to me with a platoon, an infantry platoon, and you bring no money, and you bring fake weapons. Actually, don't even bring weapons, bring sticks.
Yeah, broomsticks. Yeah.
You bring broomsticks, and I'll take you out on the beach, and we'll get training, and I will put pressure on your junior officers and your junior NCOs that will prepare them for combat with nothing. With nothing. We can do that every day as good leaders. And so that's what I would focus on. I would focus on getting you and your troops, getting yourself personally. If you're a shooter, what can you do to be ready? If you're a leader, what can you do to be ready, and what can you do to get your troops ready for when the call comes?
What about so let's say you had a opportunity to speak to the new SecDef, which by the time this comes out, maybe it's still Pete Hegseth. I hope it is. Pete's goal is to improve the morale of the troops, to improve recruitment and really make sure that we keep the retention that our military needs. What advice would you have for a guy like that taking on a big responsibility?
Yeah, this is something that you and I discussed when you were on my podcast recently, which is you just have to make the military the military.
Yeah.
Right? As I told you when I was a kid, what I wanted to do when I grew up, I wanted to be a commando. And all you needed to show me was, where do I need to sign to be a commando? You didn't need to recruit me other than say, hey, here's where you need to go. Here's what you need to have ready. Here's how you need to be prepared. And you come over here, sign this piece of paper, and you can be a commando. There are hundreds of thousands of people that want to do that. Hundreds and thousands of people that want to do that. There's something in some people that's what they want to do. And it's not a small number of people.
No.
It's a good amount of people that want to serve their country and they want that job. And by the way, if they don't want to be a commando, there's some people that really want to be air traffic controller. There's some people that really want to be a diesel mechanic. There's some people that really want to be an artilleryman. There's some people that really want to be a tanker. There's some people that really want to be in aviation. There are people like that. So that's what the military should be focused on. All those different components, whether you're a supply person, a logistics person, whether you're an administrative person and you're in the military, we need you and we got a job for you and you can serve this greater purpose. And I think if they spread that message, you're going to get the people that you need.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree. I mean, our nation, you and I get the privilege to travel around and see our nation, talk to people. We don't live in a silo. And as I travel around the country, this country is still full, coast to coast, of young American patriots that want to serve our nation. And it blows me away that through all the politics, through all the divide, there's still young men and women that are just itching to raise their hand and serve. I get messages from all the time. I know you do too.
Yep. So I think that if they focus on that, if they focus on it, and I've heard Pete talk about the military should be focused on winning wars. Yep, that's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what the military should be focused on. That's what it's literally for.
That's what its job is.
So let's focus on that and don't worry about the other stuff. Let the politicians be politicians and the military can focus on fighting and winning wars, which is where they should be focused.
So when you left the military, you retired. What rank did you retire?
Lieutenant commander.
Lieutenant commander. So you retire. What's transition like for you? Did you plan to be Jocko? Did you plan to be like extreme ownership and all these things? Was that your goal to transition like this, or did it?
No.
Did it happen?
It just happened. About 6 months before I retired, I had a friend of mine that owned a big company, and he asked me to talk to his executive team about leadership. I knew him through jiu-jitsu, so he's like a jiu-jitsu bro. So I said, yeah, no problem. And I went up and talked to his executive team about leadership. And when I got done, he said, I want you to talk to every division I have in my company. And I was like, well, I'm retiring. I'm just going to run my gym and train jiu-jitsu and surf and hang out with my kids. And he's like, I'll pay you. And I said, okay. So I started going around the country, talking to these various divisions. And then at one of those divisional meetings, the CEO of his parent company was there. And he watched me. And when I got done, he said, I want you to come and talk to all my CEOs. I went and talked to all the CEOs at a CEO summit. And then a bunch of those CEOs came and said, I want you to talk to my company. I want you to talk to my company. I want you to talk to my company. And so next thing you know, I had a business. And I reached out to Leif and I was like, hey, bro, I need some fire support over here. And he's like, let's go. And so we started, working with different companies. Eventually the demand signal for this information written down somewhere came up. We wrote down the information. Eventually that turned into, got seen by a literary agent who, recognized that this could be a book. We ended up writing the book proposal, and the book proposal got rejected a few times, which I didn't really think much of it. But then, one of the publishers, Mark Resnick, he's our editor and from St. Martin's Press, he took a shot on it. And it ended up being a pretty good gamble for him because the book did well, and that's. I was
gonna say there's some publishers kicking themselves right now.
Yeah. But then as we were doing promotions for this book, or as we were strategizing about how to do promotions for this book, and again, I didn't have any social media. Never done any interviews. But Leif was married to Jenna Lee, who was at Fox at the time, and so Leif had an avenue to really help us out. So I felt like I needed to do something to, carry a little bit of the load myself. I ended up doing a podcast. A friend of mine, SEAL Doc Parsley, was friends with Dr. Peter Attia, who is friends with Tim Ferriss. And Parsley told Peter Attia, like, Tim Ferriss should have this guy Jocko on his podcast. Ended up doing his podcast and, becoming friends with Tim. And then Joe Rogan heard that podcast. And this was in 2015. So podcasting wasn't really the thing that it is now. And I would say podcasting peaked a few years later, or didn't peak, but it really got traction a few years later. So in 2015, I was on, those are the two biggest podcasts in the world. I was on both of them in a span of a month or so. And both of them told me, you should start your own podcast. And so I had the two biggest podcasters in the world telling me to start a podcast. I was like, okay, I'll start a podcast. And so I talked to my friend Echo Charles, who knew how to work a computer and press record. Here we are. And that's how the podcast got started. But it wasn't a grand plan or anything like that.
Yeah.
I didn't foresee any of this stuff happening. That's one of the things I always laugh about is I never took any pictures of anything. Like there's very few pictures that I have from my time in the SEAL teams, from my time in Iraq.
I did the same. I hate that now.
Like, so I bummed out now. But when you see the same 9 pictures of me in Iraq, it's like, well, I wasn't there with a Kodak camera taking a bunch of pictures. But it's because none of this was, I thought I was going to retire and train jiu-jitsu and surf and play guitar and hang out with my wife and kids. And I ended up not doing that.
There's a book called, I don't know if you read it, The Myth of the Overnight Success.
No, but the title kind of says it all, I guess.
Right. Yeah. People see, you where you are and they're like, man, how lucky is Jocko? Like overnight success, right? But they don't see the work, the grinding that came.
Yeah, and I am lucky. I mean, I was very lucky that guy originally asked me to go talk to his team about leadership. I was very lucky that Doc Parsley, when he told Peter Attia, who told Tim Ferriss to have me on that's very lucky stuff. Lucky enough that Joe Rogan heard it. Lucky enough that Joe Rogan at the time, we were all on Twitter like a lot back then. And that's because when our book came out, it was actually Leif Babin's wife who was like, you need to go on social media. And I literally said, no, I'm not going on it because it was just didn't seem like a thing. And she was like, you're an idiot. And I said, well, Roger. And eventually Tim Ferriss said, it wasn't recorded because, dude, you need to go on this thing called Twitter. And I said, and now I have, this guy telling me to do a podcast, telling me to go on Twitter. So I went on Twitter. And I remember the first time I posted anything, I had to call this girl, Jamie, that works with us at Echelon Front. I was like, how do I post something? She's like, you're an idiot. I said, I know. But at that time, Twitter was smaller and everyone was smaller. And so Joe Rogan hit me up like, hey, dude, heard your podcast. Do you want to come on mine? I'm like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like real simple things. So, I worked hard my whole life, but there's definitely a lot of luck and blessing that comes into it. Like I said, I've had a very lucky and blessed life and career thus far. And, I'm a hard worker.
Yeah. That's to say luck creates opportunity, but then the grind that you put after that is where you cash in. And
yeah. I'm a hard worker. I'll say that. I'm not the smartest guy. I'm not the strongest guy. I'm not the fastest guy, but I can definitely work hard and I don't need a lot of sleep, which is always beneficial. It's very beneficial. Like I said, got very limited genetic gifts, but I was very lucky in my job that even though I wasn't the strongest and I wasn't the fastest, I didn't need to sleep. So, okay, I can work and I can get things done. And then that ends up being beneficial.
And by the way, shout out to Leif's parents. I love his parents. I've met them a couple of times at Congress, and Mr. Babin, Dr. Babin, Congressman. He's read all my books. He's super encouraging to me. Just amazing. They're amazing people.
Yeah. He's a great guy and a great family for sure. Yeah.
So how'd this build into the Echelon Front? Obviously started the second you got a chance to speak for that first CEO, but then it became branded as Echelon Front later on. So how'd that business get built? Was it just organic, or you finally said, hey, we gotta corporatize this or package this thing?
It was just word of mouth. And, we were talking about the combat leadership principles that we learned on the battlefield. And those I wrote those down in 2006, right when I got back from Ramadi and started working with platoons. And I was like, oh, these people need to understand the things that I understand. And so I wrote down the 4 laws of combat leadership. Boom, there you go. And so, yeah, Leif and I realized pretty quick, we had a business that we needed to put together. And so that's what we did. We named it Echelon Front. That's a little nod, a lot of things in my life are a nod to Colonel David Hackworth, and that's one of them. I'm sure you've heard the term REMF before, which is rear echelon motherfucker, which is what they called the people in the rear in the Vietnam War. And so I wanted the company I wanted it to be understood, at least by us, that this was about leadership at the front. And so not the leadership in the rear, but the front line leadership. And so that's why we called it Echelon Front, not Echelon Rear.
For those listening, a lot of companies out there listen to the show. We have a lot of business. I speak at a lot of YPOs. You've heard of YPO.
Yep.
So speaking of a lot of YPOs, I know a lot of them are listening. Like, how could companies get involved, take some of these strategies, or even get tied into Echelon Front at their businesses?
Yeah, I mean, echelonfront.com. You can go there. We have a leadership consultancy. We've got a bunch of people that travel around the country doing long-term leadership training and alignment for companies. And we have an online training program. It's a great way for us to take these principles that we learned and teach them. And the results that we see they're phenomenal. It's been amazing. And that's why we've been around for over 10 years right now. And it's a word of mouth business. You don't make it for 10 years without changing the trajectory of company after company after company after company. And that's what we've been able to do. It's because these leadership principles work. They worked in combat, they'll work in corporate, and they'll work with a Girl Scout troop. These principles are the critical leadership principles to be able to lead any team or any organization. And they work so well, and it's been proven over and over again in every different environment, every different industry. And that's why Echelon Front exists, and that's why it's grown so much. And that's why we have a lot of business, because we help businesses get better.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love to take the kind of the fundamental principles. That doesn't matter if you're a Navy SEAL or a IT tech, like those principles still apply.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about discipline. I have a saying we use at Mighty Oaks. You're going to suffer one or two things: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. So you're either going to live a disciplined lifestyle and the difficulties and challenges that comes with a disciplined lifestyle, or you're going to live a life of regret. This show, the Resilient Show, is we're about teaching people, the audience, how to be resilient, how to hear resilient stories like yours, and putting principles in place in your life. Your theory on discipline on everyday life, how does some of the things you talk about through extreme ownership outside of the corporate world apply to everyday life, people applying discipline to their everyday life?
Yeah, I mean, that's another book that I wrote. It's called Discipline Equals Freedom.
Yes.
And the more discipline that you have in your life, the better your life is going to be. And there's absolutely no question about that whatsoever. Is it easy? Nope, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Do you always want to do it? Nope, you don't always want to do it. Does it always prove out in a short-term basis to recognize the benefits? Nope, doesn't work that way. You can go to the gym today. You're not going to notice it. In fact, it might even be negative, because you might be a little bit tired and a little bit sore. You will see no changes in your body. You will see no changes in your health in one day. Not even really 4 days. Not even really 7 days. But if you're consistent and you're disciplined for a month, you're going to start to see some noticeable things. 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, right on down the line. It's the same thing with your finances. It's the same thing with your health. It's the same thing with your relationship with your family, with your spouse. Like, everything that you have discipline with will get better over time. And so discipline equals freedom.
Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Yes, it is. Not easy, but simple.
I love the word discipline, but I also love the word intentionality. How much of a disciplined lifestyle requires like intentionality, being intentional, having a plan, having a regimen, and or these resources you have like written with the ability to help people be intentional, to give people a map to do that.
Yeah, when you say that word intentionality, it makes me think of something I tell some people sometimes, which is it's real easy to be in cruise control on life, where it's like you're not really paying attention to where you're going, and you're just in cruise control, and wherever that car is going, you're going to go, and it's okay. Well, that's okay. But if you want to get somewhere specific, then you better take control of the wheel.
Yeah.
And you better drive that car where you want it to go. And so that's intentionality. When you say that word, I think of grab the steering wheel and drive your life where you want it to be. Do not just let things happen. You have to be default aggressive and make things happen.
In a society like, especially for Americans, there's really two types of discipline. I believe that one is external discipline, consequences, and then the other is internal discipline, and that's where the intentionality comes from. External discipline would be like driving a car, right? If I'm not disciplined about the speed limit, well, the external discipline is going to come from the police officer pulling you over, getting you a ticket, or throwing you in jail. Internal discipline would be you monitoring, being intentional about monitoring your own speed.
Internal discipline, self-discipline is certainly preferable to external discipline.
Yeah.
And external discipline, as you said, it'll come your way if you don't have the self-discipline.
Yeah, it's going to come through consequences.
Yeah,
and
it won't
usually
feel
not.
good.
Yeah, you're right. Usually it's not going to be the favorite way. For those struggling with failures and setbacks, because I've listened to a lot of your stuff, and I agree with everything you say, put out. But I know from the people I work with, especially at Mighty Oaks, it's people with setbacks, people with feel like they have limitations, people with all the excuses, and some of them are feel like almost valid excuses, right? You know, you're waking up at 4:34 every day, but then there's other guys that they work in 80 hours a week, just trying to put groceries in the fridge. There's guys that are injured. I mean, just you were talking about the Aaron Hale podcast. Like, I mean, he's such an incredible example of someone that's overcomer and discipline. But what do you say to the people that have like every excuse imaginable and feel like they just have no more bandwidth to be intentional about adding discipline to their life, to taking control of their life, to just at wits end? How do they get back? How do you gain back control when you feel like you have none?
Yeah, you got to start with what you can control.
Yeah.
What can you do? You can't snap your fingers. If you've dug yourself a hole, which happens.
Sure.
You know, we dig ourselves holes, man. That's that's the way life works sometimes. You know, you're a good example. You dug yourself some serious holes. And you don't get to just snap your fingers and now all these mistakes that you made are gone. It's kind of like with the idea of extreme ownership. Sometimes people think, oh, if I take extreme ownership, then I'm good to go. Well, no. You take extreme ownership, you still dug a big hole that you're at the bottom of. And extreme ownership, saying I take ownership and saying this was my fault, does not get you out of that hole. You got to get that shovel and you got to start pulling dirt back down. You got to start packing it down and you got to start working to make up for the mistakes that you made in the past. So that can be very demoralizing because depending on the depth of the hole that you dug, you got to recognize it could take quite a bit of time to get out of that hole. You know, if you put yourself in financial debt, if you really did something bad with your relationship with your spouse or your kids, like it can take a long time. It can take years to undo some of the problems that you have caused yourself. So that's the reality check. Now, here's the other reality check. What's your other option?
Yeah.
Is your other option to keep digging down? Is your other option to stay at the bottom of this hole? Or are you going to try and make some form of progress in your life? And you absolutely can make progress. Doesn't matter how deep you are. You can make progress. You can start to improve things. And I will say this as well. As you start to improve things in your life, you will gain momentum. Not that you're not going to hit setbacks, because you will, but you'll be able to handle those setbacks better. And generally speaking, there will be a trajectory that gets better and better the more discipline you have and the more you do the right things and the more you make the right decisions, things will get better. Again, it's not like things aren't going to go bad. It's not like you can start to turn your life around and you quit drinking and you patch things up with your wife and then you get fired from your job. That can happen.
Yeah.
That can happen, but now you at least have a good relationship. You can talk through with your wife. You can explain what you're going to do with your finances. You can come up with a plan to get a new job. You know you're not wasting money on booze. Like there's a whole bunch of things that you already have moving in the positive direction. So if you're in a hole, stop digging, number one, and then start to make changes so you can get yourself out of that hole. And it might be slow and it might be a long crawl, but it's going to get better.
I'm asking this next question from me because where you are right now and I'm in this predicament in my personal life where I have so many things going on. I say no to a lot of things. We have a saying like sometimes you say no to good things so you can say yes to the best things, leave margin in your life. But I fill my plate up because I just want to get after it. I'm extremely motivated. I feel like I have one life and I want to make as big of an impact as I can. And I'm sitting here looking, you got all these books you've written, you got your supplement company, you got the podcast that we're sitting in your studio right now, Extreme Ownership and Echelon Front business, all these things you're doing. What is your recipe to balance it all and maintain a healthy personal life, family life, mentally and physically not being just drained and depleted? Have you figured that out yet?
Yeah. So the answer to that is something that I once wrote about It's the 4 laws of combat leadership: cover and move, simple, prioritize and execute, decentralized command. This is the literal crux of what we teach at Echelon Front. These are the things that I taught the SEAL platoon leadership. These are the things that I've taught to hundreds, thousands of leaders across the country and across the world. Cover and move, simple, prioritize and execute, decentralized command. Taking extreme ownership that's the cornerstone, but cover and move. That means we have to work together. If you and I are working together, sometimes you got to pick up the slack. Sometimes I got to pick up the slack. We got to cover and move for each other. That's what we have to do. If we have a good team, there's going to be some times where you're going to be not able to accomplish your part of the job. I'm going to step in there and do it. This is what I have to do with my wife, right? This is what you have to do with your wife. Oh, I got some extra time right now, or I don't have extra time right now. My wife's going to cover for me. My wife handles a whole portion of my existence. She does everything in a whole portion of she handles finances. She handles everything that has to do with my house, with my kids, with the administration she's the COO of my life, right? And so she's doing all that. And she also doesn't come to me and ask me to do things that she knows that I can't get done. And I don't ask her to do things that I know she can't get done. So we have to cover and move for each other. We support each other, and we do that with our kids as well. Kids need to step up. Once your kids get a little older, I know you've got older kids, they can step up and start doing things. So cover and move. Simple. What's the plan? What's the plan, and what is the strategic goal that we're trying to reach? What are we trying to get done? Because if we don't have a plan as a family about where we're trying to be and what we're trying to make happen, we're never going to get there. Same thing with our business. What is our plan for the business? What are we trying to make happen? Where are we trying to get to? If we don't have a plan, then how can we possibly execute it? And then we need to communicate that in a simple, clear, concise manner that everybody on the team understands. And if we do that, we can all move in the same direction. And then prioritize and execute. Priorities are going to come up. Sometimes the priority is going to be work. Sometimes the priority's got to be home. Sometimes the priority is going to be this business. Sometimes it's going to be that business. So we need to figure out which is the most important priority at that time. It doesn't mean target fixation. It doesn't mean that we forget about everything else. But there's times where I tell my wife, like, hey, have you seen my calendar for the next 6 weeks? And she's like, no. And I go, it's ugly. It's all full. You're not going to be seeing much of me. And by the way, these two parties you wanted me to go to, not going. And okay, it's going to be 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks. After that, we can hang out for a weekend. It's going to be all good, but you got 6 weeks going to suck. Okay, cool. So she understands what the priorities are. And we have to do that back at work as well. Hey, listen, if you put me on the road one more time right now, it's going to be self-destruction. I need a block of time. I need 3 days where I'm not going anywhere. So we have to prioritize and execute, and we have to constantly modulate where those priorities are and be executing on the right thing. And then the last one is decentralized command. Decentralized command means everybody leads. And so I've got companies that they're running and they need very little interaction from me. Sometimes though, I need to step in and help out with something. Sometimes I can totally back away. Sometimes I don't have to worry about one of my businesses for 4 weeks, barely talk to anybody. Then something goes wrong. I might have to jump back in there and see what's happening, see if they need any guidance from me. Decentralized command is how we make things happen without having to do everything ourselves. And yes, it's the same thing with our families. So our kids, we want them to be able to go out and operate on their own and make things happen for themselves. So the way that I do the stuff that I do is because I implement the principles that I actually talk about. That's how this works. Cover, move, simple, prioritize and execute, decentralized command. And when something is going wrong, I know it's because I'm not implementing those principles effectively. If I have something that's taking up a bunch of my time, okay, something's going on. I'm not prioritizing correctly, or I don't have decentralized command where someone's covered, or people don't know what they're supposed to be doing, or people don't realize that I need coverage right now. So these principles that we talk about for business, they work for life as well. They work for the family. They work in the house. They work. And that's why they've been so popular, and that's why they gain so much traction.
That's gold, man. And I tell you why you just talked about what you teach, and I asked you a question about what you do, and you're implementing. You're a user.
Yes, I get high on my own supply, as they say in the drug dealing world. Yeah, I practice what I preach, and when things aren't going well, it's because I'm not practicing. Yeah, and it's very easy for me to recognize. It's very easy for me to recognize, like, oh yeah, I'm not doing that. So I don't end up wildly off course. You know, it's like when you were in a platoon back in the day, like you get experience. You don't make a big mistake and you're like, wait a second, I'm totally lost. I don't know where I am. You go, hey, wait a second. Where's that? Shoot a resection off that hill over there.
Doesn't feel right.
Oh yeah. We're 400 meters off course. Okay, cool. Let's course correct. We don't go 3 kilometers off course. I'm not going 3 kilometers off course with my life at this juncture. It would be pretty pathetic if I did. I'm not going 3 kilometers off course. I don't want to go 1 kilometer. I don't want to go 500 meters off course. Hey, do I go 100 meters? Yeah, I'll need to make some course corrections. Of course, we all do. But if you're paying attention and you're utilizing these principles, you're gonna stay on course.
Love it, man. So 2025, everyone's making New Year's resolutions. Why do people make New Year's resolutions and they don't see them through?
Well, you probably heard me say this before. I don't really believe in motivation at all. I just believe in discipline. And motivation may or may not be there when you wake up in the morning. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter. What matters is discipline. What matters is that when the alarm clock goes off, you get up and do what you're supposed to do. So that's how I feel. That's how I operate. Do I always feel like getting up out of bed at 4:30 in the morning? No, I don't. I don't always feel like it. Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Like I'll have a workout. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go get the thing done. Is it going to be the best workout ever? May not be, but I'm going to get it done. We're going to make something happen. So I'm not a big believer in motivation. I just believe in discipline.
So you don't believe in motivation, which is based on feelings, but why discipline? Like what drives the discipline?
When you are trying to achieve something,
mm-hmm.
you're trying to achieve that thing for a reason. And so when you ask me, why discipline? Well, we're trying to make things happen. We're trying to move forward in life. And for me, when I think about the friends that I lost, and I know you've lost a lot of friends as well. We talked about the Battle of Ramadi, and in the Battle of Ramadi, I lost guys, Mark Lee, Mikey Munster, Ryan Job. Those are my guys that I lost in Ramadi. And of course, just like you, the list of people that we've lost is immense. They gave us this gift of this opportunity. They gave us the sunrise in the morning. They gave us the sunset at night. And I want to make sure that I do everything I can and live in a way that those guys are watching me and they're nodding their head and they're smiling. And they know that I appreciate this gift that they gave me, and I will not squander it.
Live for what they died for.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Now, as far as, the New Year's thing, for the past couple of years, we've been running this thing called the DEF Reset, the Discipline Equals Freedom Reset. We do in a conjunction with Echelon Front and Jocko Fuel. And it's just awesome. It's just basically have everyone come up with a plan. We kind of get ready in December. And the reason I realized this, because I used to, the first time that we were going to run this, I said, don't believe in it. They're like, what do you mean you don't believe in it? I said, if you want to get disciplined, don't wait till January 1st. Start freaking now. And then I realized, when we would go on missions, we didn't go on a mission without a plan. Like we came up with a plan and figured out how we were going to do things. Situation, mission, execution, admin, logistics, command and control. We came up with a plan. And so here I was telling everyone, just execute. Don't worry about coming up with a plan. So this thing that we run, DEF Reset, that's a good way. We'll have probably 100,000 people doing it this year. And you're going to get disciplined. You're going to wake up early in the morning. You're going to work out first thing in the morning. You're going to prioritize and execute, meaning you're going to write down the things that you're supposed to do during the day, and then you're going to go do them. You're going to eat clean food, right? You're going to clean fuel for your body, and you're not going to eat any sugar-coated lies like donuts or whatever other crap you're putting into your body. You're going to make sure you hydrate. You're going to read or write every day. And then finally, you're going to remember. You're going to take that moment every day to remember the people that sacrificed so that you can be here and you can live this life and you can live it well.
Appreciation is such a powerful thing. For those, because we're releasing this, right now at New Year's. So for those who hadn't had time to prepare, can they jump in on this?
Yeah. Go to thedefreset.com and get in the game real quick. And there's an
say it again.
The Def Reset. It's Discipline Equals Freedom Reset. And we made an app for it this year. So it's really cool. Again, it's like a bunch of people that want to get better, want to do better. It's like I get asked, by especially like people in marketing and retail about Jocko Fuel.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, who's your demographic? And I'm like, people. And it really is. And I work with people all the time and I do events all the time, and people that listen to my podcast are people that identify with what I'm talking about. They're not like, a bunch of, 18 to 24-year-old male military people. Do we have 18 to 24-year-old male? Hell yeah, we do. Do we have law enforcement? Yes, we do. Do we have soccer moms? Yes, we do. Do we have yoga instructors? Yes, we do. Do we have finance people? Yes, we do. Construction, we've got everybody. It's people, it's human beings that want to get better. That's our demographic. And so who's going to be doing the Def Reset? A bunch of human beings that want to get stronger, smarter, faster, healthier, and just be better humans.
What's on the horizon for you in 2025?
Probably the biggest thing on the horizon for 2025 is I've written a bunch of kids books, and the kids books, Way the Warrior Kid, has been turned into a movie. Where filming has already taken place, which is a huge deal, because if I didn't really know this at the time, but the amount of Hollywood movies that get pitched compared to the amount of Hollywood movies that get made is like minuscule. I didn't know that. I was too naive to know that. I just thought, of course, they're going to make this into a movie. It's the best kids book ever. Of course,
fraction of a fraction of percent. Yeah.
It's so small. So every step of the way, you can get all the way to starting filming. You can get halfway through filming. You can get 3/4 of the way filming, and everything can fall apart. And so it's a huge point to be at where the filming is actually done. It's all complete.
Are you allowed to say who's playing in it?
Yeah. It's Chris Pratt is playing the Uncle Jake character, who's from the book. There's another young actor named Jude Hill who did a phenomenal job, and he plays the lead kid character. And it's directed by a guy named McG, who's did a fantastic job, who's directed Terminator Salvation, We Are Marshall, The OC, Charlie's Angels, and he actually started off back in the day making music videos for a bunch of different bands. So he did a phenomenal job, and that should hopefully be coming out in the spring of 25.
Man, I'm super happy for you for that. And not only happy for you, but happy for America. Because as I travel around the country, I think that book I hear most about, people are like, Jocko, and tell them like, I know you. And no one asks. I mean, people do ask about extreme ownership, but mostly it's about the kids' books, The Way of the Warrior, and so I think there's probably not a better time in America for something like this to hit the big screen.
Yeah,
every parent should take. I haven't seen it yet, obviously, but every parent should. Get this book, first of all.
I think it's been a long time since there's been something like this out there in the world, something that really tries to give kids and parents a code and a way to live, and the important values that they should have in their life are in the book. And so I think it's going to land really well. And, I was on set for, I don't know, we filmed for something like 45 days, and I was on set for like 40 of them. I was there almost every day. And so you get to really see the thing come to life. And, there's scenes in it. It's a very emotional movie. And there's scenes in it where, I'd be watching a scene and I didn't really know this before, but like when they're making a movie, they film the same scene like 15, 20, 30, 35 times, literally the same scene. And there's scenes in this movie where I watched, 20 takes and got tears in my eyes every single take watching this story unfold. So I think it's going to be really moving, and it's going to help a lot of kids, help a lot of parents, and help people find a good path in their life on how to move forward.
Jocko, you books like that, extreme ownership, you probably would never realize in your lifetime, maybe beyond your lifetime, you'll get a chance to look back and realize the impact you made in people's lives and businesses. You're leaving just an incredible legacy beyond being a Navy SEAL on our culture. For you, when it comes to the topic of legacy, what is it that you personally want to leave behind in your life?
Just trying to help some people out. I think that's, when I was reading your book and you went through great lengths to rescue a couple people. One of them was the Fox News reporter, Benjamin Hall. Even if you didn't do one other thing in your life, you got that guy back to his wife and kids. And like that, to me, everything you've done, you could throw it all away. If you did that one thing, you done good. And for me, I'll get a letter from a kid that started jiu-jitsu and was able to stand up to a bully or did his first pull-up or got an A on a math test or something like that. Or get a letter from somebody that took ownership of their life and stopped drinking or got healthy or got promoted or was able to take care of their team. To me, that's kind of where I'm at this juncture in my life, is just hopefully I can help some people out and pass on some of the lessons that I learned, and they can take those lessons, implement them, and make their lives better. And that's kind of where I'm at this juncture as a 50-plus-year-old man.
You're still crushing it. You're still crushing it. 50, what, they say 50 plus? Good.
Yeah, exactly.
That wasn't a good impression, but it's still good. So, man, everybody listening, hope you're off to a great new year. Jocko gave some incredible wisdom and insight for us. He did not want to promote his stuff, but I will for him. All these books, guys, you can find Jocko's books anywhere books are sold. He has some incredible companies, his supplements, Jocko supplements. If you're in Texas, HEB, pretty much anywhere you can get your stuff. Arjun, you have clothing, you have gis, you have fightwear. If you're in Southern California, come train at Victory MMA. I'm going to train with them tonight. Actually, we're not training at Victory. We're training at Atos
yep.
with Andre Galvao.
Yep.
And so we're going to be training tonight. But, man, it's easy to follow Jocko on Instagram or anywhere. You can find him on Instagram. You can find him on all the social media outlets, and definitely listen to his podcast. Again, my episodes, the historical episode we did, kind of my origin story and Afghan evacuations, was episode 375. And the one we just recorded is 467. We're going through Mission Without Borders, and I appreciate you doing that. We have some incredible sponsors at my show. Allied Wealth Management is one of our investors that they doing just incredible financial work, making me some serious money. I'm moving my money out of my 401k as an Allied Wealth Management, and they're doing really well for us. Bio Accelerator is a stem cell company out in Colombia. I know you're in health. A lot of your listeners are probably in health, but this is where UFC sends everyone down to Medellin, Colombia. I've been down there. Just incredible. If you ever want to go down to Medellin, Colombia, the CEO, Eric Schofer's already told me he'd take care of you. And the stem cells, it's not what they do here. It's Medellin, Colombia, and Panama, those places. They have it down. It's actually companies out of Scottsdale, Arizona, but they're clinics down in Medellin. And again, that's where all the UFC guys and stuff go. So you have an offer from them. If you ever want to go down, they'll take care of your treatment for you.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's super awesome. I've had stem cell hair, and it felt like placebo or just snake oil. Mm-hmm. I went down there and immediately felt like it knocked off 10 years. I had injuries go away that I didn't even know I had. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know it was hurting until it's gone. One of our other sponsors is BioPro. We got a couple of our team guys that came on the show that started taking BioPro and fell in love with it. The biggest thing for me was sleep. Sleep's so important. I went from 4 hours of sleep to sleeping about 9 hours a night on BioPro. So it's a non-synthetic, all natural. It's the velvet off of deer antlers. So it's not new. It's Eastern medicine, and it's been phenomenal for me. And I'm a real believer, and I don't promote anything that I don't actually do. And I know a lot of athletes, a lot of jiu-jitsu guys. Have you heard of BioPro yet?
I have not.
Yeah, so I got to get some for you. Right now, this is the 2 nighttime ones. We got them mixed up, so we'll get you a daytime and nighttime one. But it's phenomenal. And same thing, that company, anything you need, they're going to take care of you moving forward. Smith & Wesson Firearms. Every one of my guests gets a Smith & Wesson.
It's good to hear.
I heard that you're wanting a built out AR platform. So we're gonna work with Smith & Wesson, get you an AR built out. I'm gonna get a Gemtech suppressor on it, and Vortex is our other sponsor, Vortex Optics. By the way, these companies, Smith & Wesson and Vortex, they're not just sponsor a show. I become really good friends with these people. These are incredible people, like Shamus over at Vortex, and Kyle and Tingle and Mr. Mark Smith at Smith & Wesson. These are absolutely incredible Americans, patriots, and just these companies are amazing. And as well as Gators glasses. You've wore Gators glasses before,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we'll get some Gators glasses for you as well.
Oh, sweet.
So they're gonna hook you up. Our sponsors appreciate you and love what you're doing. They're all fans of you. So,
Yeah, actually, I wear Gators.
Really?
Yeah. I wore Oakley's for a really long time, and they stopped making the lens color that I like. And Gators makes the lens color I like.
What color is that?
It's like I guess it may be called amber or something like that.
Same here.
It shades your eyes, but you can still see. Mm-hmm. So Oakley, I literally wore Oakley's for 30 years. And they stopped making that lens color, and they make all these lens colors that have like a bunch of mirrors on them. And so
one thing you like about Gators is that the company is here in San Diego. They manufacture them in Tucson, Arizona. So they're American made, and they're super quality. Ballistic lenses are great.
Yeah, no,
frames.
I'm very happy with my Gators, and now it looks like I got another pair coming to me, which is good to hear. Because I've got whenever I have something I like, I always have backups. Yes. So I have, I think I have 3 pairs of them right now. Like one that I'm wearing in my primary, then a secondary, then a backup in case, something goes catastrophic with my glasses. But so it'd be good
2 is 1, 1 is done. That's
yeah.
the rule.
And 3 is just like I'm ready for the apocalypse.
Yeah. Yeah. So man, these guys love you, and we'll get them hooked up. I want to get some books for you to send to them. So
right on, no problem.
But so they get some extreme ownership of their companies as well.
Let's make it happen.
So, all right, thanks so much, Jocko.
Right on,
God bless.
Thanks, appreciate it, brother.
Yeah,
Thank you, man.
We'll see you guys next week. God bless. Hey guys, thank you for watching this episode of The Resilient Show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you hadn't already, please click subscribe so you don't miss any future content. We have so many amazing guests scheduled and you don't want to miss it.